Well, those of you who are here, we're glad you're here. I'm going to go ahead and just start with introductions and such so you get to know who we are. So good morning. My name is Aimee Julian. I'm the director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. And with me today is Brittany Boston, and I'll let Brittany introduce herself.
Yes, good morning. My name is Brittany Boston, and I am the Associate Director with ICSPS.
And we're here to talk to you today about universal design for learning and human-centered design. And you're going to find that a lot of the things that we talk about they're very similar. So by show of virtual hands, how many of you have heard of universal design for learning or human-centered design? You can raise your virtual hands there. Anyone? All right, so then we're going to go to our next question because that's going to be a good level set for us. So how well do you know UDL? One, put this in the chat. One would be not at all, two would be somewhat, three, you had a training or two, or four, I could write a book. So just go ahead and plop that in the chat there and let us know where our levels are. We have a lot of ones coming in. Okay. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you to those who participated. And oh, we got a couple twos. Okay. So that's looking good. So we've got some not at alls and some somewhats, and that's fantastic. So we're going to do a nice basic introduction. We have a lot of professional development on this topic. We also have some fantastic Wednesday webinars. So if you want to learn more, we're going to really nice do a kind of quick introduction and then open up for some conversation. And all of you have the ability to unmute yourselves, or I think you do, Jordan. Is that true? They can all unmute themselves?
As far as I'm aware. If not, just type it in the chat and I'll make sure that you can talk freely.
Excellent. So have you heard of human-centered design more? So same question, but for human-centered design. How many of you have heard of human-centered design? One, not at all, two, somewhat, three, had a training or two, or four, I could write a book. Okay, we got again some ones and some twos, some different ones. Oh, we got a three. Okay. So Anne, you're going to be excited to learn that human-centered design and universal design for learning have the same basic principles. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So we're going to provide an overview of universal design for learning. We're going to explore those concepts. You are going to be amazed at how you can engage with UDL every day, and then you're going to gasp with delight, laugh, nod your head, all those wonderful things. So one of the things I want to talk about is our learning environment right now. And again, we're going to make this fairly quick, but you're able to sit anywhere you want. You have the screen share slide. We can send a personal copy of the slides that we use, and then you have the chat box. So use that chat box, raise your hand, engage with us as we move through today for our short little time together here. So universal design is legislated. It's in the law. It's coming out of the Department of Education. Human-centered design is more coming out of the Department of Labor, and you're going to see similar concepts. The definition of UDL is in both Perkins and the Higher Education Act, and it's a scientifically valid framework for guiding educational practices that provide flexibility in the ways in which information is presented, in the ways in which the students can respond and demonstrate knowledge, and skills in the ways students engage. So you're looking at how do you make things more human-focused through universal design. It reduces barriers in instruction. It also provides appropriate accommodation, supports, and challenges, maintaining that high achievement expectation level, but including students with disabilities and students who are limited English proficient. So UDL is really that idea of how do we enhance the learning environment by removing barriers from the current environment. Principles of UDL is there's going to be multiple means of representation. So provide options for perception, provide options for language, mathematical expression, and symbols, and then provide options for comprehension. There's also multiple means of action and expression, multiple means of engagement. So really what we're looking at here is how do you allow the student, again, because it's Department of Education coming out with universal design, or they've been talking about it since the 70s, that idea of provide options for physical action, options of expression and communications, options of executive functions, and then engagement. How do we have it recruiting interest, working with sustained effort and persistence. And then really that comes down to this lovely little grid, which is the what of learning, the how of learning, and the why of learning. So I told you to be quick and dirty, but that is really looking at what are the fundamental components for universal design, is the what, the how, and the why. And we walk through that in the way in which we engage with our individuals. And you're saying, great, Aimee, but we're here. And I'm gonna give me a show of hands. How many of you, well, I'll wait on that question. So then when we come to human-centered design, okay, so remember, universal design is the what, the why, the how. Human-centered design is a problem-solving technique that puts the real person at the center of the development process, enabling you to create products, services that resonate and are tailored to the audience you need. And Harvard Business School has done a lot of, that's their definition. There's a lot of different definitions that we use, but I wanted to really start with this one. And then I want to show you a little video because I like this one. And this gentleman is actually, did that pop up on your screen? This guy?
Yep.
Are you seeing him? Excellent. So he is the grandfather of both human-centered design and universal design. I don't need that. So let's go back to the beginning here and listen to what he has to say. Are you able to hear that? Are you able to hear that?
It's a little quiet.
All right, so let me stop my share and share with, I realized when I did that, I didn't share with the video settings. We all know Zoom, you got to share for optimizing video clips. There we go. And
Test of human-centered design, because what are the principles? Doing and clean the place? You have to think of it as a system and look at all of the components. That's the second important thing. Find the right problem. Almost
Aimee,
always when somebody
you're on the
gives me a
wrong
problem
window.
to solve, I refuse to solve it because it's not.
I'm also wrong with you.
Yeah, it was your other monitor, not the YouTube video.
Sorry.
The audio was good though.
The audio is good. Excellent. Well, let me share. Oh, yeah, you were seeing the. Okay. My apologies. Thanks you for telling me that. Cut that out of the recording, Jordan. Thanks. All right, let's come back here and start again.
The principles of human-centered design apply even if you don't follow the process of human-centered design. Because what are the principles? Well, the first one is be human-centered. Focus upon the people that whatever you're doing is intended for, whether you're doing a service or a product or an organizational structure or a new way of, I don't know, stocking the warehouse or putting things on shelves, whatever you're doing, always think of the people and all the people, not just the people, say, who are going to retrieve the items you put in, but the people who have to put the items up there in the first place. And if you're in the healthcare system, you have to think about patients and their families and the physicians and the nurses and also the medical personnel and the technicians, and for that matter, even the people who do the scheduling and who clean the place. You have to think of it as a system and look at all of the components. That's the second important thing. Find the right problem. Almost always when somebody gives me a problem to solve, I refuse to solve it because it's not the right problem. It's the symptom of the problem. And I want to solve the fundamental basic problem, because if I can solve the basic problem, guess what? The symptoms disappear. But that's not always so easy, and it can take a lot of time. And even though I argue strongly you should always try to solve the fundamental root problem, sometimes it's okay just to solve the symptoms. And finally, you have to think of everything as a system. Everything is interconnected. So if you solve this tiny little piece, well, that's kind of nice, but sometimes optimizing each of the small pieces gives an inferior result. Optimization of the local does not mean global optimization. And so we should always be thinking of the big picture. What is the final result we care about? And user experience isn't always the most important component. Because take a camera. What's the camera about? All those controls? No. The camera is just a tool to get the real user experience, which is the experience of enjoying the movie, the video, the picture. It's the end result that matters. And so we should be focused upon making it easier for people to get to the end result. We don't have to focus on the details of the tools. Those have to be understandable and usable. But remember, the important thing is the real goal of the people who use our products.
All right, so I'm gonna pull him over. Thoughts on that video? Any comments, any thoughts? Y'all loved it? Best thing you've seen today? Can you all still hear me?
Yes,
This
Aimee.
Yeah, this is Martha Younger White from Chicago Lighthouse. I guess working in human services, we're kind of used to being people-centered. So, to hear it is great, but truthfully, that's what we do every day. So,
Right.
right.
No, and thank you, Martha, for sharing, but you are absolutely correct. If you're working in if you're working in human development or you're working in human resources, you should be human-centered. But the idea is like, let's look at all those different fundamental components. So the 4 principles of human-centered design, and Martha, thank you for contributing and speaking, are being people-centered, solving the right problem, looking at everything as a system, and then small, simple interventions. And what's really exciting is we want to be human-centered. So in the workforce development, in the JTED system, we're looking at how are we going to best serve our client, our customer, our student, correct? Yes? Yes, thank you. But sometimes they have challenges, and that was a really big takeaway for me when he said, you don't have to solve the problem for the symptoms, you need to find the root cause of the problem and solve that problem. And it reminded me often of when I work with employers and they talk about how, well, we have the issue of, Brittany's late for work. She comes in, she does a great job, but she doesn't get here on time. And so if we just like move her workday back, is that a symptom of the problem? Yes, and we're solving that symptom, but really the root cause is that she has having a transportation issue. So how do we look at the being human-centered in the way of looking at the full human experience? What has brought them to our doors? What has made them at a position where they're asking for help? And then what help best suits them? And then looking at everything as a system. And I think that's important because all of you have a role in that system. So it's not just all about the customer, the client, the student. It's also about how all of the different cogs in that wheel need to move together. And then small, simple interventions. What are those things that we can do to be sure that we're doing the right or solving the right area? So when you look at doing some experiments, doing a test, assessing to improve, like seeing if what you have done made a difference. So for example, we're going to go back to that issue with Brittany. If I give her a gas card, does that solve her problem? Does she need a bus pass? Like doing some experiments, seeing what is the best way to get to the problem. Brittany, anything you want to add there?
No, I think you covered it all, except I will add that I'm not late to work all the time.
No, no, she's not late to work at all. I just would use you as an example. No, she's not late to work at all. She's often here before I am, and I'm late to work a lot. So what is the goal of human-centered design? And the goal is to keep the user's wants, pain points, and preferences front of mind during every phase of the process. One of the things that we talked about as we look through the human-centered approach is that idea of what makes the process most seamless. We've heard that term a lot, right? How do we make the process seamless? How do we work about referring the individual so they can get the best out of the workforce development system, because each person has their own role, but then also keeping their wants, their pain points, and their preferences front of mind. In turn, you'll build an intuitive, accessible product that are likely to turn a higher profit because your customers have already vetted the solution and feel more invested in using it. Again, this is Harvard Business School, and they're looking at it from a business perspective. One of the things that human-centered is used for very well is if you think of the Apple products. So if you have studied Steve Jobs at all, he is a huge implementer and lover, and I know he is not with us anymore, but of human-centered approach. He would be so inclined to look at the weight of what the iPhone was during the time that he was alive. What is the functionality? Could they hold it in their hand? Is it like right now? I think he would be completely disgusted that it's gotten so big, and that you have like the supersized phones. But I think that is something that really is important if you think about user friendliness. I like the idea of the healthcare system, looking at it not only from the patient perspective, but also from the family perspective. What are those things that we can do to enhance that experience? And it's the same way with when we're serving our clients, customers, and students? Or do they have those supports in place to make them successful as they move into the training or occupation that we're looking for? So I'm going to pause there for questions. Any questions? All right. So I want to kind of go into the stages of design thinking, because when you look at the importance of human-centered design, you need to clarify, ideate, develop, and implement. And the first phase is dedicated to collecting data and observing your customers to clarify the problem and how you might solve it, rather than developing a product based on assumptions. You conduct research, you do some assessment of customers, and you ask them questions. We talk a lot about this in the state level at focus groups, right? Has everybody been a part of a focus group or done some focus groups? And say, I know Rosa and I know Shannon and Tammy have all been parts of coordinating focus groups, but it's that idea of making sure we have empathy, the capacity to understand the other person's experience, the emotions that are going into that experience, and you need to be considerate of your customer's perspective, ask questions to determine what products they are needing, and in this case, the product is, your grant, your funds, how you can support them, and then determine what products they're currently using and how they're using them and what that challenge that they're trying to solve. So we're trying to get to work. I'm having that issue with getting to work. How do I solve that problem? That's that clarify stage. That's really asking a lot of questions. If you're familiar with like a CQI, a continuous quality improvement structure, this is going to remind you of that discover phase, because you're going to want to discover their pain point. What are those data breakdown types? Looking at all of those different things. And the pain points you can use are often aware of the frustrations that they have occurred. What are those things that they're finding frustration with? Going back to that example of getting to work on time, it's a frustration because I take the train and the train's always late, or I take the bus and the bus is always late. Are we feeling good with clarify for the stage of design thinking? I'm going to take silence as acceptance, and we're going to move on to ideate. The inspiration that you gathered from the first phase. So you've got all these questions, now you have all this data. Now we'll lead you to the second phase, which is ideate. During this stage, you're going to apply a design thinking tool such as systematic intervention thinking or brainstorming, right? How do we solve this problem? Overcome the cognitive fixatedness and really look at what is the problem and how are some fun ways to solve the problem. So we're going to do a little exercise in the chat here. We're going to go back to the Brittany travel question. And Brittany, not to pick on you, but you're never late, but I'm going to pick on you for today. So Brittany has an issue, or one of your clients has an issue getting to work on time, getting to the training on time, getting to whatever obstacle that we're putting in, whatever end result on time. What are some brainstorming, throw some in the chat. What are some things that are happening that could possibly be keeping them? We're skipping the clarification stage, just kind of based on your personal experience. What do you think could be some areas that would cause somebody to be late chronically? Throw those ideas in the chat, please. Okay, daycare doesn't open early enough. Fantastic. Paratransit, road construction. Excellent. If you were in Baltimore last week and the bridge collapsed, that would have been a big traffic issue, correct? Among a whole humanitarian issue as well. Anything else? Any other reasons why individuals? Child misbehaving, school issues, school schedules. Excellent. Not enough funds to travel. Thank you. All right, those are all great things. This babysitter issues, fantastic. Thank you, Stacy. Cab scheduled ahead of time, but the driver doesn't show up. Yep, that happens. All right, so we've gone through, this has been fantastic. You've gone through that brainstorming stage. You've looked at all those different things that could possibly have been an issue, and you're looking for a possible solution, right? And as we move into that possible solution, you're going to move into the development stage. And this is when you combine the critique with the critic. And so you're looking at the ideas you brainstorm to create a range of possible solutions. By combining, evaluating your ideas, you can better meet your users' needs, determine what you want to do to move to like a prototype. So we've identified some of the areas that could be the need is transportation, or that's the issue. We've ideated some of the areas that, we did some brainstorming. Now, what in the chat, throw what could be some rectifications. What are things that we could do to support our client, our customer, our student in supporting their transportation issue? Ride shares with fellow employees or students, excellent. Adjust their schedule, request a reasonable accommodation for a schedule change, excellent, fantastic, thank you. Anything else? Get a different sitter. Yep. Sign up for a taxi access program, fantastic. All right, as those of you who are still typing, go ahead and type. 3 characteristics of human-centered design are that the vital to consider when critiquing an idea is that they need to be desirable, they need to be feasible, and they need to be viable. Okay, so bus passes, provide bus cards, ask them for more information, and brainstorm together. Those are fantastic. But let's be sure that our solutions are desirable, feasible, and viable. So desirable, does this innovation fulfill the user's needs? So far, yes. We're going to say yes, that's great. Is there a market for it? Yes. Is it feasible? Is the function possible? For example, nobody said, let's buy them a plane, because that's not feasible, right? Have you ever had discussions with kindergartners on how to solve problems? They have a lot of audacious ideas, but we want to be sure it's feasible for our design thinking. Does it produce an innovation? Is it legal, economical, and are there any technological barriers? So you guys have all come up with very practical excuses. So yes, they are feasible. And then is it viable? Is it sustainable? Can you as a funder, or you as the JTED provider, or you as the workforce development system provide or produce this product profitably, like allowing, is it a permissible use of funds is some of the language that we use, right? You talked to Josh about that. And so then you have that development stage, right? So you have some great ideas. Now you look at the final stage, which is implement. And in this stage, it's crucial to communicate your innovation to your stakeholder. So we are going to, and Sarah, you got to this a little bit ahead of time, ask them for more information about and brainstorm together. So we go to, and I'm going to still pick on Brittany, we go to Brittany, we say, Brittany, we've talked to your training provider, there's an issue with you coming in on time. What can we've come up with some solutions, what works best for you? So looking at, what is going to be most beneficial, and also think about the different parts of the state. So a bus path is great if you have public transit. However, a bus path does not work so well in an area that does not have a public transportation system. Those of you who are sitting in Chicago are like, oh no, we've got tons of public transit. Yes, you do. You're very lucky. But if you're looking at, say, Champaign, Illinois, actually they have a pretty good bus system. Bloomington's is okay. Galesburg's not so great, right? Not the best bus system over there. And so you have to find other means that are not public transit to get that person to the final area that we want to go. This implementation phase is going to take some time. It's also you're going to need some reflecting. You're also going to need to ask some questions. So for example, we could say, Brittany, if you're having trouble, is it a gas issue? Do you need a gas card? But it's not beneficial to buy Brittany a gas card if she doesn't have a car to put gas into, right? Exactly. So how do we work with that implementation phase? It's important to note that, it's not necessarily over at this point in the stage of design thinking. You'll want to really look at, is it sustainable? Is it able to be continued? And so there's some lenses that we look at when it comes to human-centered design. And we talked about these again. Techniques suggest that innovations can only be successful if 3 conditions are met. Their desirability, feasibility, and viability. So are we feeling like we've learned a little bit about human-centered design? You got those reactions, you can raise your hand, say yes. Give me a sad face, any of those things. Thumbs up, woohoo, all right, we're taking that as a yes. So I'm gonna move over for just a second into universal design, because again, I said that they were similar but different, right? So we've got human-centered design. We have the idea of the goal, human and, the praying point in front, looking at being empathetic and sympathetic, talking about people-centered, solve the right problem, everything is a system, simple interventions and small interventions. So now we're going to look at UDL. And universal design is presented in architecture, in neuroscience, and in learning. And really, when you look at that, we're looking at different places that we see universal design. I'm going to kind of ask some fun questions now. So did anybody drive a car today? You can shake your head yes, you can shake your head no. So if you drove a car today, when you got into said car, did you have to adjust the seat? I have been blessed with a second new driver in my house, and he is actually taller than me, but for some reason feels that he needs to sit very high in his seat and very forward in his seat. So when I get into the car in the morning, if Jacob has driven, I have to lower my seat and put my seat back because he likes to sit very weird. Being able to do that is a principle of universal design. Being able to adjust your seats, being able to have anybody walk into a grocery or a Target or a Walmart lately and the doors open for you, that's universal design. Over the weekend, did you happen to do any baking for the holiday and have any kind of utensil that kind of had more of an ergonomic handle? That's all universal design. So we see it often in architecture. We see it in our everyday life. We see it in the neurosciences, looking at how it helps us prepare. And in learning, it really is that idea of being prepared, letting the student know what's coming. And so I'm not going to share another video, but I am going to talk about universal design is that idea that the barrier is in the environment, not the learner. And often when we talk about the populations that we serve, there is a little bit of deficit language. And what I mean by deficit language is that idea of blaming the student for their circumstance, blaming the client, the customer for where they are or what their challenge is. And when you talk about universal design for learning, you flip that on its head and you say, what is the barrier in the environment that is causing the issue? So UDL is not a checklist of things to do. It is a lens through which you look at everything you do. So as an instructor, UDL pretty simple. Brittany and I were actually having this conversation this morning. I put my syllabus out ahead of time. I make the students aware of what's going to be coming. So like if you're looking for your training provider, same thing. Do the students know what's happening for the day? Do they know where the labs are? Do they know where they're going? Is there directions provided? Do they know how to show up, what to wear? Do they have the proper gear? All of those things and letting the student come equipped is that idea of universal design. Britt, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it all. But I will say, because Aimee brought up a conversation that we had, I think also asking for input from whether you refer to them as your students, your clients, your employers, your employees, always getting that feedback is important because they are bringing new eyes to a situation that you may have been in for a certain period of time and have gotten accustomed to, that old saying of, well, this is how we've always done it. And so really asking for that feedback from a new set of eyes can bring light to things that you may have not been aware of. And so including them in that conversation is always very important.
Excellent. So as we look with UDL, again, those multiple means of representation, multiple means of engagement. So human-centered design focuses on the process and the environment. So really looking at what is the human focus of the process, looking at the system of they're going through, whatever they're going through. when you look at universal design, it's the way in which they are going through that environment and what barriers they encounter and how we can alleviate those barriers. So very related to dinner. I mean, very related to one another. And the reason I said dinner is because that's the next slide. This is a great little analogy that we like to use to talk about how the understanding of variability in universal design. So many of you are sitting there saying, that's great, Aimee. I'm going to go through the implement, I'm going to go through the brainstorming, I'm going to have a solution, and we're going to tackle problems from a very human focus. But there's a lot of different issues, right? And our clients, our customers, our students come to us with quite a few different issues. So understanding variability and planning and being able to plan for variability. This exercise was actually done by CAF, which is the organization which really literally wrote the book on universal design for learning. And so the analogy is pretty simple. I'm going to invite, we're coming up on lunch, right? 10:30, we're going to have lunch about an hour and a half. And I'm going to invite you all over for lunch today. You're all going to come into my little hypothetical office here. We're going to have lunch and I'm going to serve this. And this is the only thing we're going to have, but we're going to have this Mexican lasagna for lunch today. So throw in the chat or feel free to unmute and tell me, is there anything about this that you could be problematic? Everybody's ready for Mexican lasagna? No problem. Right? Someone's gluten-free. Yeah, that could be a problem. Those noodles might be gluten-free, but not necessarily. So good, excellent. Lactose intolerant, yep. That's cheese in there, exactly. Dairy, yep. Anything else? Vegetarian and vegan, excellent. Spice tolerance, fantastic. I often get people having an issue with the corn. They don't like the corn in the lasagna, which I just find comical. Mobility and ability, use the fork, thank you. And then it looks delicious, but some people may not like the dish, exactly. So if you have a dinner party and you serve only one thing, that only gives people one option, right? So some of the things you brought up, so you have gluten-free, lactose intolerant, vegetarian, all of those people would not necessarily enjoy this dish. However, we serve something like this, a proactive menu design. People are able to pick and choose what they want. It allows everyone to have the same experience, but if you're a vegetarian, you don't have to have the meat. If you don't like corn, you don't have to have corn. If you are lactose intolerant, you can skip the cheese, all of those things. So do you see how this allows for more options, more variability than just the lasagna? I'm going to lie to you and say, I see you're shaking heads. I just know you're shaking your head because of course it does. It's great. And the important thing is that when you're looking at variability, it's not the same as choice. So if I do my menu for the week and I say Monday we're having spaghetti, Tuesday we're having soup, Wednesday we're having salad, Thursday we're having tacos, and Friday we're having pizza, this is a choice, right? Students, you can take the gas card, you can take the bus card, you can take all these things. This is a choice, but the choice isn't the same as variability because they still only have one choice. And if you don't like cheese, I think Tuesday, and I have issues with dairy, Tuesday is the only day that I'll be eating apparently at my own house here. So that could be a problem. But it is that idea of allowing variability. So how do you set the table for learning? And I'm going to share with you some videos, but I want to talk into this one other option, and then we're going to kind of give you some resources. So does anybody know who this is? Kind of giving away on his little nameplate there, but Usain Bolt, thank you, Shannon. Yes, and Usain Bolt at one time was the fastest man in the world, and he is there in his running shoes. And if we didn't design for variability, if you were asked to just wear the same size shoes, do you know what the average size of a male foot is across the world? Global average size. So if we just gave everybody the same thing, we would give Usain Bolt a size 8.5. That is the average size of the male foot across the globe. And so do you think that he would be able to run as fast in a shoe that is an 8.5 when he actually wears a size 13? Could have been a problem, right? So again, we plan for variability, we design for variability, we give people options that fit and make their needs, adjust their pain points, adjust their expectations. So I do want to share with you a couple more things, because I know we're kind of coming to the end of our time here. So I want to share. Sorry, I thought I had it queued up, and apparently when I did my little guy's video, I didn't. We have a whole series of videos on universal design that our friends over at ICCB had commissioned us to work on. So this is our ilequity.com, and it is equity in career and technical education. And if you're interested in universal design for learning, there is a whole series of videos that are on universal design for learning. And they are fantastic, and they will show you all the different types of things with universal design. So multiple means of representation, of action, of engagement, understanding the design. And I think, Jordan, let me know if we have a second and I'll share one of the videos. And then we also have a whole bunch for in the CTE classroom. So also on this page is the CAF guidelines and key questions to consider when planning a lesson, tips for universal design experience, all of that great stuff. So if you're looking at enhancing your training, enhancing your curriculum, enhancing your access, we have a whole bunch of videos on UDL. Human-centered, some of the stuff that we covered there, then there's some great resources that we can share as well. Jordan, do we have enough time for a video?
Yep.
So I'll go with this one. Oh, yeah, we'll go with this one.
Universal Design for Learning, UDL, is an approach to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all learners by setting clear, rigorous goals, anticipating barriers, and proactively designing to minimize those barriers. You may know of universal design in architecture. It's an approach to design that works to ensure products and buildings can be used by anyone, regardless of their level of ability. When a building is designed for flexibility, it can serve everyone, with or without disabilities. Let's consider this universal design approach in learning. What difference would it make if educators looked for barriers in the design or in the curriculum rather than in the learners? What if we built flexibility into teaching and learning? Why should we look at our design and infuse UDL? Research shows the ways people learn are as unique as fingerprints. Variability in learning is the norm, so curriculum needs to be designed from the start to meet the diverse needs of each learner. When we design for the average learner, we miss reaching nearly everyone because no one is average, at least not in every area. When we design for variability, we are minimizing barriers and increasing access for all our learners. Variability is contextual. That means a learner may need the design to be different depending on topics, the environment, or the time or day of instruction. Every learner brings their own background, strengths, needs, and interests. To meet each learner effectively, the learner needs should be addressed through choices and access to provide authentic learning experiences. Designing for individuals in the margins helps everyone by providing support and challenges for all. We know from our friends at CAST, the Center for Applied Special Technology, pioneers in UDL, that universal design for learning equals learning for all. Remember, small changes make big impacts. What's one small change you can make?
So that's just one little example. I'm going to now open that up for questions. Like, are there questions that you have about UDL? Do you have questions about human-centered design? This was really just a little introduction for you. Any comments, any questions?
Aimee, maybe to get the conversation going, I do know, like, implementing these, I know everyone's kind of probably doing a significant chunk of these, but that kind of that 4-stage implementation is a pretty big time sink. So how would someone who's kind of already swamped with work like incorporate that well to maybe address some of these things that they haven't had time to sit with or address?
Excellent question. So let's go back to that slide of. Sorry, I missed that. There we go. Stages of design thinking. So really looking at as you're forming into a program. So instead of waiting for, to kind of answer your question, Jordan, instead of waiting for our individual to be late and the employer to have that problem, if we ask those questions at the beginning. So if we keep the user's wants, pain points, and preferences in front of mind, then we would be able to design as we move forward. So we should know, like, let's take transportation. How many of you, just show of hands, have had transportation as an issue for somebody? All of your hands should go up because we've seen transportation be an issue across the board, right? So let's plan for that. Let's be proactive. We know our audience. Don't discount your own expertise. You know the clients that you're serving. You know the customers that you're serving. So if you know that they historically have transportation issues, if you know they sometimes have housing issues, if you know that they have issues with food insecurity, how do we plan for that? And keeping the human, our client, our customer, our student in the center of our design as we're rolling out a program. So if we know we're going to have transportation issues, have those gas cards, arrange those bus passes, do that community mapping to know what your resources are, which I know you all already have done. Like that's something that you just do out of second nature to all of you. But then also look at the way in which your training can really enhance and support those individuals. So it's being a little proactive. So it's going through those stages, but being more proactive. So it's not as a single individual problem, but what are, going to that clarification stage of what do we think we're going to encounter as we roll out with this particular process. I know, Shannon, you and I talked yesterday about the Home Act, and there's some home opportunities, and their primary area is homelessness. So they're looking at how we're helping individuals who are experiencing homelessness become engaged with the system, and how, one of those things when you're doing that clarification stage or that NDA stage is, what are the stats on homelessness in my area? What are those things that I can do to arrange support for individuals who are homeless? Also, think of this stages of design thinking as something that you can do as part of your grant writing process, because then your implementation is when you get the grant. So if you're clarifying, if you're ideating, if you're developing, if you're going through that idea of data collection and observation, you're going on the idea of brainstorming, you're going into, I've developed a plan, now I need money for that plan, I've written a grant for the money for that plan, the implementation phase is then your grant itself. So think about it in the ways in which you're already using the idea of human-centered design, because I know many of you are if you're going and writing an effective grant proposal. And I did see I had a hand up. Was that you, Martha, or Marcella that had their hand up? Did you have
No, it was me. I just had it up from having transportation issues.
Okay.
Students.
So does that make sense to all of you? The idea of like really thinking of that stages of design thinking to apply that to your grant writing, and also to looking at the bigger barriers that your clients, customers, and students experience?
This is Martha Younger White from Chicago Lighthouse. I think where we experience it greatly among other workforce development partners is when we start talking about accommodations and who pays for those. And unfortunately, it's I know you talk about design, but sometimes the systems aren't really there to provide for those accommodations. I mean, I can tell you an example. Just even today, one of our participants in our JTED training has now had to sign up twice for accommodations for a national testing organization and is still waiting on their approval. So, I wish the system was designed for flexibility, for accommodation. Unfortunately, some of the notable learning systems are not. And it's unfortunate. And I know I've engaged Tammy in the past with the National Health Careers Association, but I'm very frustrated, honestly. So it's great to hear that, you as a learning institution are promoting universal design. We need to get to some of these other credentialing organizations and make sure that they understand that there's a whole population out here that's trying to access these jobs.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, they're making it more difficult. So that's my soapbox for today. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Martha. Thank you for sharing, because it's true. There are a lot of different accommodations that our clients, customers, and students need. And it is, how do we adjust and support them? So I will say, and I'm going to invite Brittany to add to this as well, but there is on the Wednesday webinars, we did a session about accommodations, and I learned a ton about what are those accommodations that are available and individuals are entitled to. So I will share that with Jordan to share out with all of you, because it's a fantastic webinar. We brought together individuals from DHS and Voc Rehab around what accommodations our clients, customers, and students could access. And then when working with the you said the testing organization, that's a little upsetting, actually very upsetting, because they should be able to provide accommodations. That's why they're funded to do so. So those are things that we want to be sure we have in our plans, but also at the same point, pushing those organizations to do a better job at supporting our clients, customers, and students. And I do think accommodations is something that some of those are very simple, and some of those are things that like a little bit more time on a test is a very common accommodation. Having larger print is a very common accommodation. It's not something that's taking away from the content. It's not something that's taking away from the way in which the student engages, but it is something that makes the product, whatever that might be, more accessible. Brittany, anything you want to add about accommodations and supporting individuals with disabilities? I know you do a lot of work in that area as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can share some resources and things in the chat. I think going back to what I said earlier, it's really important to just keep those lines of communication open, and having an environment that allows people to feel safe and comfortable, disclosing that they do have a disability and may need some accommodations and additional support, because a lot of times, those aren't things that they necessarily have to inform you of. But we know that when they do, it gives us the opportunity to better support them within the process. And so making sure, whether it's you have one individual designated that they can build a relationship with and have that communication with, but allowing them that safe place to share that information, and also in continuing the education and knowledge for the individuals that work within your organization, on how best to support and communicate those questions or those needs with individuals is also very important. I think when we talk about supporting individuals with disabilities, education on both ends of the spectrum are extremely important, because we know that, whether it's just terminology in and of itself or accommodations, technology is always advancing, always changing. So making sure that we as professionals are also staying abreast to those changes as well is very important.
So there are a couple webinars that I'd like to point out. One is transportation related barriers impacting student access to work-based learning. That was done December 13th of 2023, which would be a great presentation to look into. And then the other one, again, if you didn't see the supporting refugees, that's a fantastic one. Title I and Title II services. That's a case study. And then individuals and natural support for employees with disabilities back in July. We did 2 on those as well. So if you, I'm gonna put these just in, I'll just put the direct link and you can just go shopping in here in the chat. But there's some great resources there on the IL Workforce Academy website. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing because I believe we're right close to time. Is that correct, Jordan?
Yep, we're wrapping up, so, and I will kind of put these all together in a follow-up email, so, if you don't open up in the chat, you should get them within the next few days, from me as well in an email. So, thank you, Aimee and Brittany, for presenting today. I know I learned a few different things, and, this will be posted on WorkNet, like, all the previous TA sessions here within the next week or so. I'll email out all of the notes and links to those additional resources. If anyone has additional questions, they can always shoot me an email, and I'm happy to follow up with you or direct you to someone who can answer your questions. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great day, despite the weather, and have a good rest of your day.